In this video, we will be covering one of the key skills taught in Cooking Matters programming, how to read ingredient lists. In this video, we're going to cover how to start the conversation around whole grains, how to use visuals to teach whole grains, as well as how to identify whole grains using label reading. To begin the conversation around whole grains, ask open-ended questions like, what have you heard about whole grains? What other terms have you heard to describe whole grains? After assessing the learner's knowledge through open-ended questions, a good way to describe whole grains is using visuals. It doesn't matter what type of visual you use, but it's great to have something to describe the three parts of a whole grain. Some options we have are using a model or a photo of a whole grain. In this example, I would describe the three parts. Whole grains will have three parts, including the bran on the outside, which is where the fiber is found, the endosperm on the inside, which is where the carbohydrate or energy is found, and on the very inside we'll have the germ. Ask participants, have you heard about a wheat germ? Perhaps that will help them recognize they've heard that word before. In the germ, that's where you're going to find the healthy fats and the vitamins and minerals. So with a whole grain, it's good to reinforce that you get all three parts, the fiber, the energy, the vitamins and minerals, and healthy fats. You can also use this visual to then reinforce what the difference between a whole grain is or a refined or enriched grain. As I said before, with a whole grain you get three parts. With a refined grain, they strip away the bran and they remove the germ. This is a great opportunity to talk to participants and ask about why perhaps this happens or how this changes the food. With an enriched grain, they've added back in the vitamins, but traditionally they won't add back in the fiber, which again is a great opportunity to have an open discussion with your participants about possibly why food processors do that. Another low-cost visual is putting whole grains into small bags so that participants can see and touch some of the whole grains they may not have consumed in their lives. In addition to this visual, you could also use fiber tubes. This is an easy way to take something and create a visual for fiber, which is traditionally difficult for participants to understand. You can measure this out to show the fiber that would be found in like items, and it's always best to compare items that will have an impact to participants. For example, the fiber found in a piece of white bread versus the fiber found in whole wheat bread. By using fiber tubes, you can create a visual for something that participants would not be able to see when looking at foods. So, there are many ways to use visuals for teaching whole grains, whether it's a model, a photo, examples of whole grains, or fiber tubes. These are all ways to engage your participants in learning about whole grains and allow them to see some of the differences. A great activity that's offered in our programming is a visual for showing what fiber looks like. A way to do that is place a piece of white bread into a bowl, as well as a piece of whole wheat bread into a bowl. This can not only be a way to engage participants by allowing them to do this activity, it can also be a way to show them things that, again, they wouldn't be able to see by looking at the product. As you'll notice with a refined grain, in this case white bread, it absorbs the water and it starts to break down. Whereas you'll see with the whole wheat bread, you're able to wring it out like a sponge and put it back into the water. This is a great opportunity to ask participants why this is happening. In this case, it's the fiber. Whether it's a visual that you use or an activity that you use to spur discussion around fiber and whole grains, it's also important to ensure that you're teaching the key skill that they can take with them when they go to the grocery store. That skill is ingredient list reading. So when they know about whole grains, they're now able to go into the store and make sure they're getting those. In the Cooking Matters program, the way that we teach ingredient lists is through identifying whole grains. Before teaching participants how to read labels, it's important to know if they're even using ingredient lists by asking open-ended questions like, how are you using ingredient lists? Why are the ingredients in the specific order that they are in? To gauge their knowledge and understanding of ingredient lists. Once you know this, you can move forward into identifying where the ingredient list is and how to identify a whole grain. In this product, we will be looking to see if it's a whole grain by looking at the ingredient list. As always, we want the first ingredient to say whole. Whether it's whole wheat, whole corn, or whole oat, we want to make sure that it says whole. For this specific product, the first ingredient is going to say whole wheat flour. In this product, you'll notice that it doesn't say whole grain, it just says brown rice, but that's okay. It's important to show participants that they can identify whole grains by looking at the ingredient list. It's also a great way for them to know what's in their product. So now participants know how to identify whole grains by looking at the ingredient lists. It's always important to make sure that participants look at the ingredient list because looking at just the outside of a food product or even the name of a food product can be deceiving. Things can say wheat or whole wheat without actually being whole grains. So it's important for them to look at the ingredient list and to know that if it says enriched or refined, that it's not a whole grain. Whether you're using visuals to teach about whole grains or showing participants how to label read using ingredient lists, it's always important to make sure that they understand what they're being taught. No matter where you're teaching our participants how to read ingredient lists, it's important to ensure we have hands-on learning through visuals as well as extra packages. So bringing additional boxes or food packages can be a great way to allow participants to look for whole grains. And the visuals like bags of whole grains, fiber tubes, or any type of visual for a whole grain can be great to ensure that participants understand the difference between a whole grain or a refined grain. Thank you for watching this video. By teaching our participants how to label read and identify whole grains, you've given them a powerful tool to improve their lives and make healthier choices. For additional information, please refer to your educator guidebook, facilitator book, or toolkit. And don't forget to practice hands-on learning and facilitated dialogue. There's also many additional resources on our website, so please check those out as well.